Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to episode 5 of the Soulful Latte podcast. This is your host, one of them, Samia, and I want to share with you a little bit of what is happening and why we were a week late in producing this episode for season 3. As the rest of the world and me and you and every single human being right now is concerned, we were not prepared for the pandemic that just happened. We're not prepared for what this means for the rest of the world. We don't know how it will affect us and if it will affect others. This is something that we just never thought about. And when we started this season 3, we were extremely excited, totally organized, ready to go, and then the world turned upside down. So that also changed a lot of our schedules. We had some guests ready to go for you with really amazing topics, and we were going to start turning towards Ramadan during the end of the season. Everything was planned, but alhamdulillah, that was not something that was meant to happen because kids being at home, schedule changes, we just were not able to go through with everything that we had planned to do this season. And this is one of the lessons that we're learning through this and through every other aspects of our lives, because constantly changing things and everything being as it is, there are just abundant lessons around. So normally we have 8 episodes per season. That has been our tradition since the beginning of this podcast. Unfortunately, for this season, because of the current situation, episode 5 is going to be the last one. And right now, Qudsiyah is unable to have as much access to the internet as we both need in order to make this happen. Apparently, the demand or whatever that is happening in the UK has not made it feasible for her to be able to have reliable internet connection, which we need so that we can record a podcast for you guys together or have someone else coming in. So definitely this is a change of pace, but we are so very grateful, coming from me and Qudsiyah both, for everyone who has participated and listened to this season. And we're really hoping that once everything settles down and Allah has delivered us from this test, then we can come back and tackle all the things that we meant to tackle. So for this episode, since we were not able to talk about Ramadan like we wanted to, we thought it would be really great to look back into our seasons and find out little bits and pieces that we can use for this Ramadan coming up. So get ready, because you have quite a few powerful advices and some of our personal experiences, which we hope will enrich you and rekindle your desire to approach Ramadan with as much enthusiasm and hope and intention as it would if the world was not turning on its heels. So join us for a little Ramadan mashup.
Welcome to Soulful Latte Podcast, a weekly conversation between two sisters to help us and our virtual friends online, like yourselves, grow in life and in faith. We're your hosts. I am Qudsiyah.
And I'm Samia. We are going to begin early on with season 1, and I just want to have a little disclaimer here. We were playing around with different mics early on with whatever we could afford at the time. And so the mic quality is not that great, but the content is worth listening to. So we're going to start with season 1, episode 4, jump to episode 6, and then we're going to go to season 2, episode 5, and then episode 6. And that is going to conclude our podcast episode for today. I hope, and Qudsiyah hopes, even though she's not able to be with us today, that you guys really enjoy this and that you benefit from this and that you have a great, beautiful, uplifting Ramadan. There lies within the body a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound, and if it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. Verily, this piece is the heart, and is found in the Muslim.
So the heart seems to be in charge of everything and how much we understand, how much light we take in. And it's almost like if we take care of the heart, we allow for more capacity to receive guidance and light. And what I really, really, really find beautiful is that the heart can change and it can be renewed. And that is the beauty of repentance. It's really beautiful how Allah encourages us to just turn back to Him, and that we can have hope that no matter how much we've added little dots to our hearts, that it can be cleaned and it can be purified. One thing that I remember from Sister Yasmin Mujahid's talk when I attended was, I'm paraphrasing, she says that we all come to this world with a sense of emptiness because that emptiness is created from our separation from Allah. And so each and every one of us has this innate need to fill this hole in our hearts. That hole is often filled with different things such as wealth, status, and all of the material things. And she was saying that our heart is created by Allah, and the only one who can fill our hearts is Allah. So, to maintain this connection and this fullness, of course, because we live in the dunya, there are distractions and there are barriers.
In my current season of life, it definitely is my health. And I don't hide that. I talk a lot about my health situations on Sunnah Living. And because it is such a big part of my life, and whenever there is a big part of a person's life that is not God, then obviously there's a problem, right? And so for me, I understand, the famous hadith of five before five, that we appreciate, these things before we lose it, and health is one of them. And it is so crucial. And I look at those of, my family members and for my friends who don't have a lot of physical, things holding them back. And I'm like, please guard that, and, do all good that you can while you have the energy, the time, the resources to do it. And so for me, there is a barrier of connection, then that is health, because when I'm feeling that, weight of my health situations and my thyroid being really annoying, then I can't really focus on Allah as much as I want to. Then I can't really be like, oh, let me pray tahajjud today, but I can barely get out of bed in the morning. So those kind of things do come in. And I'm really trying to find a balance where I can look at that health barrier and turn it into a connection in itself.
One thing that I've found to be a barrier to connection is busy being busy. And when you have lots going on, it can be quite easy to be consumed and to forget that we need to make that space and we need to craft out that space in our day to connect and to silence the mind so that the heart can connect. We all find connection in different ways, as an addition to the prescribed obligatory acts of connection. The focus is always towards what Allah has prescribed for us first, though.
Exactly what you said about, the addition to the prescribed obligatory acts. I really do see the things that, the extra things we do as like a vitamin. If I don't eat the vegetables that I'm supposed to eat throughout the day that are coming from the ground, then I can take 20 different vitamins and it just won't work. And so it's kind of like you have to do them two together, but the emphasis is definitely on, and I feel all these extra things help with the prescribed ones because they're helping me build the connection. And one thing that actually I do struggle with is the connection during prayer. And I think that if I worked on the connection outside of prayer, that it could help me establish that focus and that's needed to really formulate that connection in the prayer. On the other hand, when I'm making dua in the moment, so in the moment where I'm like, oh, I really would need help in this, or I really want, for Allah to give me ease, to make this easier, to make this task more efficient. That moment, it's like I can probably recite the prophetic duas, throughout the day, but the dua that I make in the moment is so much more powerful, and that's the one that I really feel. Sometimes where I just notice, like for example, the chicken's giving eggs, and sometimes I'm so grateful for those eggs. I'm like, oh, thank you, Allah, for the eggs because I really needed a breakfast, and this is the easiest eggs for me, is the easiest breakfast, and so one of those things. And also, I sometimes I'm spending time with my husband, and it's so rewarding, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Allah, for that. So those moments, I find that connection is so profound, and then I love it. It's that times when I really realize how Allah is really giving me more than I deserve in this life. And another way that I really find connection is Quran. And for me, like I mentioned, the prayer is struggle. For me, the Quran is not that much of a struggle. For me, as far as connecting while reading it, I mentioned. And if I can have a set number, of minutes, then I'm going to be like, okay, set a timer. I'm going to read for this amount of time, or I'm going to read these number of ayahs, and I can just sit down and recite. And to me, that is amazing. I wouldn't mind doing that the entire day if I didn't get tired, you know?
My number one would be writing raw letters to Allah. Whenever I would feel loads of emotions, I would just write to Him, really raw, really vulnerable, complete heart dump on a paper, basically. And afterwards, I would feel so light, and I would actually feel more connected to Him. And I feel more connected to Him every time that I write these letters because I feel like it's a conversation. I was doing Al-Fatah the other day. It means the opener. And while studying this attribute, I found reliance in the fact that Allah is ultimately the one who opens doors and He's the opener. So He's in charge of opening my heart if I let Him. And He's in charge of opening all the doors that I think are closed, all the doors that I don't even know exist in my life. I just need to surrender and allow Him to do the best that I know He will do and not get in the way of myself.
So, Qudsiyah, when I think about this topic, I automatically jump to the life of the Prophet ﷺ. When we learn about his story and we read about the seerah, we begin to understand that everything was perfectly by design. Everything happened for a very specific purpose. All of the people in his life, from his even before his birth to when he was being born, to towards the end of his life, everything and each individual was perfectly placed. All of the battles, all the difficulties that Muslims went through in the early period of Islam, everything was by design. So when I think of his life example, I mean, his life was designed by the same creator that I have. I just feel that everything in my life is also perfectly designed, whether I like it or I don't like it.
The realization that whatever's happening to me now is contributing towards a bigger picture that I cannot see, but Allah can see. And nothing is a coincidence, everything is crafted by Allah. And when we put that into our lives, for me specifically as well, I can see that in hindsight, everything falls into place and everything makes sense. But in the moment, there can be times where things are very, very, very challenging, especially when you don't want something.
Sometimes the reaction then is to just become completely complacent, to be like, well, I guess this is my fate. I guess there's nothing I can do about it. So I might as well just sit down and watch it all happen. Where you just want to give up on some things, whatever the challenge might be coming. And actually, a while ago, I read an article talking about mental strength and how to develop mental strength. And this was coming from another FBI interrogator, actually. And she was sharing how to develop mental strength. I mean, she's been in that business for like 24 years or something. And one thing she said was the way the people survive is by not hoping for things to change. So they're like, oh, one day my situation will end. But in fact, they survive by saying, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to get through the situation, and I'm going to win at the end of it. So that change of perspective is really big for me. She describes a time when she was really afraid of heights, and she learned it at the moment at the academy when she had to jump off into the pool, and she was afraid for her life. I mean, she could have said, you know what, I'm not going to, this is too much for me, blah, blah, blah. But what she really worked on was, looking at the situation and saying, there's a lifeguard there. I'm not going to drown. So basically talking yourself through those challenges. And with us, we know that Allah is taking care of us constantly, so that we are meant to succeed if we just trust Him in the process.
And in the same way, if we cultivate that mindset of Allah is our safety net. So even if we fall not without a harness. Like we are always having a harness, and that harness is Allah's care for us.
It's all about, understanding that I am being put in a situation by someone who knows and who cares and who loves beyond anything that I can ever imagine. And for Him to put me through that is definitely a way for Him to help me increase in this life and in the next. And it is an exercise of trust.
It's not a coincidence, but I was speaking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and she was sharing her reflection on Surah Taghabun, which is the 64th surah in the Quran. And there's this particular verse that we were speaking about that I thought might be beneficial to share. And it's verse 11, and it says, No affliction visits anyone except by Allah's leave. Whoever has faith in Allah, He guides his heart, and Allah has knowledge of all things. And we were talking about the trials and tests that we've gone through and how just Allah aims to reassure us in the verses like this one. And it says, whoever has faith in Allah, He guides his heart. And Allah knows everything. The one name that I think I just want to share with you is As-Samad, and it's the satisfier of all needs. And when I was looking into it, one of the explanations said, He knows us, and He knows what our hearts need, and He is the best of planners, and will only do what is best for us. So He is ever present, knowing our needs before we do, and satisfying them in the way they should be satisfied, not in the way that we think they should be satisfied. Sometimes we might ask for something, but the thing that will lead us to it isn't what we want, and sometimes it's just what we need.
But I was listening to a lecture and it was saying that, create your own spiritual toolkit where you plan for the days where you know you're going to feel low. So what's going to lift you up when you feel low?
So the idea is, so you would say that we can take some strips of paper and we can just write it ourselves. Maybe write it on our spiritually high days, and then and then we can pick it up on the low days.
Yeah, anything that reminds you of the love of Allah, any verses that you like, anything that really lifts your heart, I think would be really beneficial to just have like a note of them. And whenever you're feeling a bit less than 100%, referring to them, go to what you need. Close everything, close all these distractions, and nourish yourself. Just take some time and nourish yourself. Whether that's listening to the Quran as we spoke before, whether that's journaling, whether that's, doing anything that makes you feel a little bit more nourished.
Now I'm dealing with a physical inability to do the things which I would normally do. I have a little bank of energy and I have to use it really wisely, because if I spend it here, then I'm not going to be able to spend it there. And there are certain things I need to do to keep the house running in order, to keep the life running in order, like cooking and cleaning. And those things take a lot out of me. So I have what I call absolute minimums. I have different ways to address them. But it is something that I just cannot negotiate, those things. And those normally tend to be the basic things that I need to do. So I consider at that time reading extra books or doing extra dhikr is extra to me at that time. So I look at the fard being the absolute minimums. I'm having a very bad day. It's difficult for me to get up from the couch today. And I just want to sit down and just not move. But I only get up because I have to pray. And I remember those times where I would even want to do that because you just don't have the energy to, oh God, I have to go make wudu and stand. But it's like, I cannot allow myself to fall into that. That's non-negotiable. I have to do it. And that really helps me. Because that's the continuous dose of spirituality that you need. And Allah's prescribed that for a reason. And so that's one of the things for sure that I do are the non-negotiables. And I would say that's probably the only thing that is working for me. So talking about Ramadan coming up, we can take this idea of a spiritual toolkit and have it ready. I think we can have a list of non-negotiables or spiritual toolkit that we call it, and have it ready that we just take out on the first day of Ramadan and take it out every day for those 28 or 29 or 30 days. Especially for Ramadan, I feel that it would be beneficial to not only have the minimums that we're supposed to do, which is obligatory things, but to add, or if you're doing additional things that you're already doing, just add maybe one more thing, just especially for Ramadan. Like, this is my Ramadan toolkit edition, that I'm going to keep that now, and I'm going to use that every single day to help me go through this month with more success than I have previously. Recently, in the past couple of years, I've begun to understand that Ramadan is about spirituality. As much as it can be about all the other things, most importantly, it is about getting closer to Allah. This is a gift that Allah has given to us this month. We're celebrating the revelation of the Quran, which is a life-changing thing for everyone who's listening to this, probably. And so this is a celebration of all of that. So spirituality is the topmost priority. And I think there's also this idea about perfecting everything, that, I need to do I must do, I don't know, these prayers and I must do it. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on perfecting that rather than really enjoying the spirituality boost that we get from this.
And also, if we slip, we fall out of things, which is natural. Sometimes we could go into, oh, but, I didn't do it, so there's no point doing it. Like an all or nothing mindset. But yeah, this is something I've learned as well. It's okay if it doesn't happen, but just keep doing it. Just keep doing little bits.
For me, when I think of my Ramadan, right, I want to say that there is at least one thing that I can say that I have, really worked on and instilled in my personality and in my character. Even if I had 5 things on the list and I was not able to do them, but I could get one thing out of it, I think that is a successful Ramadan. Because I can remember going back in time where I got nothing out of it, So if there's only one thing, then I'm like, alhamdulillah, dude, I did good. Don't feel bad about it. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, again, if I could get those 5 things, that would be amazing. If it doesn't happen, that it's not going to be like end of everything and I'm a horrible Muslim and I didn't get anything, like really the gentleness that we talk about in this podcast so many times. It is so important, especially this month, because we get that barrage of things from other people.
It's also just about genuinely opening the heart to receive the barakah and the affection of Allah that is so abundant in this month. And I just love that Allah loves those actions that are consistent, even if they're small. I find that personally so encouraging because it reminds me that you don't have to do big things because Allah's love is there, right? Sometimes I'm the one who doesn't open up my own capacity and make space for that. I think it's the biggest opportunity to open the heart.
Yeah, when you're, I love what you said about small and consistent things. So I really like to focus on the sunnah things, small things like every time we drink water, we say Bismillah in the beginning, Alhamdulillah at the end. Getting those little habits part of your life. And if one of those habits can become your usual because of your Ramadan practice, I think that is something to be excited about. And so that would be it for me. And I actually grew up with that culture of finishing the Quran, and I think it's a beautiful thing to do. It really is if you're able to do that. And I think that should be our goal, but that shouldn't kind of hold us back. I had this one time where, I was just beating myself up because I'm like, oh, I can't finish this. Because, especially we're women, we have this week off or, a couple of days off that we get, that we're not able to do a lot of the things that other people are doing. And that extra pressure, oh, I need to make up for those 7, 5, 10 days. That's unrealistic. Let's not bury ourselves in the grave because we have to finish this Quran. Like, there's so many other things we can do in addition to it. And if you are finishing it, alhamdulillah, I am so happy and I hope I become, one of you one day. Just really know your body, and if you can't do what you wanted to do, just do the minimum like we've talked about. What is one thing that you said, I'm going to do this Ramadan? Make it simple, make it easy. Don't make it overwhelming, like I'm going to do Taraweeh, like all 20 rakats every night. It's okay if you do half of that. All right? Or if you can just do one of it, it's okay. And if you can read 3 ayahs of the Quran rather than all of the entire juz, that's okay too. That's what I learned from my previous Ramadan, is just be easy. Your body is probably going to betray you at some point. And that's okay.
What I found really useful is when people encourage you to think about, so what was Ramadan like for you last year? Think about it. Have your situations changed? What worked? What didn't work? And how can you personally just make a conscious effort to do better this year with Allah? So it's you, your heart, and Allah. It's not about anyone else, and it's not about where they are, what they're doing, how they're approaching things. It's about, how can I make this a better Ramadan?
One thing that has really helped me with that is making a log. So I started doing that, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 years ago. In my Ramadan, I log it every week, what I did, what was the progress, and what I could do better. And then towards the end of Ramadan, I have, I also do like end of Ramadan reflection. So, actually post-Ramadan reflection, I call it. So what am I gonna, what was my Ramadan like? What was I really good at? What goals I made and did not accomplish? What were the reasons behind it? And then I look back at it the following Ramadan, it is so... Ramadan is so special. This is a month where so many beautiful things happen, and we need to treat it like that. I really like what like Christians who are practicing Christians do for Christmas. Like, I love it. They recognize what the consumerist aspect has done to their faith. They recognize that. They're like, hey, we don't appreciate all of this. This is what, Christmas is really about. And they get down and together. Ramadan has become a little bit like, alhamdulillah, it's not that bad yet. I know, alhamdulillah. But it's getting there where there's a lot about consumerism. It's about decor. It's about, inviting people for dinner. It's about, I don't know, it's about everything else, but what it really should be a lot of the times. Eid shopping, all those things. It becomes something that it's not supposed to be. So I want us to really get down and really treat it like a special month. Growing up in a Pakistani culture, they talked about Ramadan being like a guest in the house. And it was, very intense. That, really treating it as something that is so tangible. Like, oh, look, this is a guest in our house. And I like that mindset. This is coming and living with us, and let's treat them a little bit special.
How I'm going to be approaching it is to think about what my day is like anyway, and what are the things that need to be done every day that are just fixed. And I think trying to inject spirituality everywhere else, revolve the day all around, say, for example, the Quran.
I like what you said about having your routine, kind of like a daily thing that your life has to do every single day. And I think I really like that. Just looking at, what, I'm going to wake up at this time, and I know this already because I've been doing it for the past, I don't know how many months, and just making and turning it around. So I think a lot of the times we want to do better things. So I think one thing would be to, if you're trying to give up a habit, give up something, definitely find a replacement immediately, which is better. So that could be one way to just take your everyday that you do all the time anyway and just turn it around into something that is really beneficial. So definitely find little moments where you're like, oh, look, I was mindlessly doing something. Let me just take a breather and just thank Allah at this moment. Do some sort of a dhikr at this time that I know about. I know what it means. I know what it means to me. And just injecting that in there. I think those things throughout the day help to get that energy you need at nighttime. Just little things, and you're like, okay, look, barakah, more things, and you're like, okay, yeah, I think I can do a little extra worship tonight, and that is a beautiful thing.
If there's something that you've benefited from today, we'll be so grateful if you'd share it with someone you know. It would help us out a lot if you'd review it on your favorite app and also subscribe to the podcast. You can contact us at Soulful Latte Podcast on Instagram and write to us at soulfullattepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.